The Galactic Council chamber was like every other Tuesday afternoon. Delegates from 47 different worlds sat in their assigned seats, half of them checking messages on their data tablets, the other half trying not to fall asleep. The vaulted ceiling stretched 5 stories high, covered in glowing symbols that represented every member species. It was supposed to be impressive. Mostly it just made the room echo. Ambassador Telrix of the Zafrani Empire approached the central podium. His body was made entirely of living crystal, and when he moved, light bounced off him in rainbow patterns. Some species found it beautiful. Others found it annoying, especially during long council sessions. "I have a minor incident to report," Telrix said, his voice chiming like glass bells. 3 days ago, our border patrol encountered an unregistered vessel in Sector 449. A few council members glanced up. Most didn't bother. The ship was small. Outdated design. Our sensors detected no faster-than-light drive, no quantum shields, nothing that would indicate an advanced civilization. Telrix pulled up a hologram of the vessel. It looked blocky and primitive, like something a species might build during their first attempts at leaving their home world. "Did they respond to hailing frequencies?" asked Council Secretary Varen, a slug-like being who managed the daily reports. "They did," Telrix replied. "They called themselves humans. Said they were from a planet called Earth, performing what they called a survey mission." "Survey mission?" High Chancellor Moros leaned forward in his seat. The insectoid leader was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with compound eyes that could track 30 different movements at once. "In unclaimed space?" "Technically, Sector 449 borders Zafrani territory," Telrix explained. "We have standing orders to inspect any unknown vessels in that region. Security concerns, you understand." Several council members nodded. The Zafrani were known for being territorial. Then again, most species were when it came to their borders. Our patrol captain, Vorith, requested the human vessel submit to inspection. Standard first contact protocol. Telrix's crystalline face somehow managed to look annoyed. They refused. That got more attention. A few delegates actually put down their tablets. They refused. Moros's antennae twitched. Did they give a reason? They said, and I quote, "We don't recognize your authority to search our vessel." Telrix made a sound like breaking glass, which his species used for laughter. As if a primitive species gets to decide what authority they recognize. More chuckles around the chamber. It wasn't unusual for newly discovered civilizations to have inflated opinions of themselves. They always learned quickly enough. Captain Vorith followed protocol, Telrix continued. He fired a warning shot across their bow. Not at them, you understand. Just a plasma burst to demonstrate our capabilities and encourage cooperation. Sensible, agreed Counselor Drex, a reptilian delegate known for his military background. Show of force usually brings them in line. What happened next? Telrix paused, and something in that pause made a few of the more experienced council members sit up straighter. The human ship turned around, Telrix said slowly. It didn't attempt to flee. It didn't power up weapons. It just turned around and faced our patrol directly. Aggressive posturing? Asked Moros. That's what Captain Vorith thought. He prepared to fire another warning shot, closer this time. But before he could, the human ship transmitted a message. The chamber was quieter now. Even the board delegates were paying attention. They sent us a set of coordinates. The coordinates of this station, actually. This council station. Telrix's glow dimmed slightly. And they sent 12 words. You fired on us without cause. You have 48 hours. Silence fell over the chamber. Not the comfortable silence of a routine meeting, but something heavier. 48 hours for what? Varen asked. They didn't say. After sending the message, they jumped to FTL and left the sector. Wait. Moros's mandibles clicked together sharply. You said they had no FTL capability. I said our sensors detected no FTL drive, Telrix corrected. Apparently our sensors were wrong. Or their technology is something we've never encountered before. Counselor Drex laughed, a harsh barking sound. So a primitive species with one outdated ship sends us a vague threat, and we're supposed to be concerned? They probably went running home to cry about the big bad aliens. This is typical new species behavior. All pride and no sense. Several others laughed with him. The tension broke. When did this happen? Asked Moros, though he didn't sound particularly worried. 47 hours ago, Telrix replied. So we have 1 hour left of their little deadline? Moros's compound eyes glittered with amusement. Well then, let's see if these humans actually show up. If they do, it will be educational. We'll teach them how the galaxy really works. And if they don't? Varen asked. Then we'll know they were all talk like most primitive species. Moros waved a clawed hand dismissively. Either way, I doubt we'll even remember this incident by next week. Proceed with the next item on the agenda. The council returned to their normal business. Trade disputes. Territory negotiations. Resource allocation. Just another boring Tuesday. None of them noticed the clock counting down. None of them bothered to check the long-range sensors. And none of them had any idea that in exactly 53 minutes, everything they thought they knew about the galaxy was about to change forever. The council session had dragged on for another hour after Telrix's report. They were deep into a debate about mining rights in the Outer Rim when the alarm started. At first it was just one alert. A soft chime from the station's long-range sensors. The kind of sound that happened dozens of times a day when cargo ships arrived. Nobody paid attention. Then came the second alarm. Louder. Sharper. Then the third, fourth, and fifth, until every warning system in council space was shrieking at once. Station Commander Thale burst into the chamber, his 6 legs skittering across the polished floor. We have an emergency. Something just dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system. High Chancellor Moros looked up from his tablet, annoyed at the interruption. So, ships arrive here constantly. Why are you disturbing us? Because the sensors can't calculate its size, Chancellor. Thale's voice cracked. The computer keeps throwing error messages. It thinks the readings are a malfunction. That got everyone's attention. The council chamber's main display flickered to life, showing a tactical view of the system. At the very edge of sensor range, something appeared. The computer struggled to render it properly, the image pixelating and reforming several times. When it finally stabilized, absolute silence filled the chamber. It wasn't a ship. Not in any way they understood ships. The thing on the screen was the size of a small moon. 5 kilometers from bow to stern. 2 kilometers across at its widest point. The hull was dark gray, almost black, and covered in what looked like overlapping plates of armor. Each plate was easily the size of a normal spacecraft. Get me a scan, Moros demanded, his voice barely above a whisper. What are we looking at? The tactical officer's hands shook as he worked his console. Sir, the hull composition is... I don't even know what this is. The outer layer reads as some kind of composite metal we've never seen before. Density readings suggest armor plating at least 2 kilometers thick in the forward sections. 2 kilometers? Counselor Drex stood up from his seat. That's impossible. Nothing needs that much armor. The power signature is off every chart we have, the tactical officer continued. Whatever's running that thing could power our entire station for a century. The communication system crackled to life. A human voice came through, calm and measured, with a slight accent that none of them could place. This is the United Human Space Vessel Indomitable Will. We're here regarding the unprovoked attack on our survey ship 48 hours ago. We'd like to have a conversation. On board the massive warship, Admiral James Carter sat in the command chair at the center of the bridge. He was in his late 50s, gray hair cut short, with the kind of face that had seen too many bad situations to be rattled by much anymore. Around him, 40 crew members worked at their stations in near silence. The bridge was surprisingly quiet for a ship this size. No dramatic alarms, no shouting. Just professionals doing their jobs. Defense Fleet is scrambling, Admiral, reported Commander Rita Hayes from the tactical station. She was younger than James, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that missed nothing on her displays. Reading 300 ships forming up between us and the station. 300, James repeated, almost thoughtfully. What classes? Mix of cruisers, destroyers, and frigates. Looks like they pulled everything they had in system. Total combined tonnage is maybe 200,000 tons. And we're at 4 million tons, sir. James allowed himself a small smile. Seems a bit uneven. Maintain course and speed. Full forward. Don't deviate. Sir, they're hailing us, said Lieutenant Kevin Walsh from Communications. Demanding we stop and submit to inspection. Ignore it. We gave them 48 hours. They had their chance to talk then. In the council chamber, panic was spreading like wildfire. Telrix's crystalline body was pulsing rapidly, changing colors in a way that indicated extreme stress among his people. They're not responding to hails, Thale reported. And they're not slowing down. Current speed and trajectory puts them on a direct course for the station. How long until they arrive? Moros demanded. At their current speed, 23 minutes. Deploy everything. Moros's voice rose to a shriek. Every ship, every weapon platform, everything we have. Show these primitives what happens when you threaten the Galactic Council. The Council's defense fleet moved into position. 300 warships formed a wall between the station and the approaching human vessel. Cruisers that could level cities. Destroyers that had fought in a dozen wars. Frigates equipped with weapons that could crack open asteroids. It was the most powerful defensive force the Council could assemble on short notice. The human ship didn't even slow down. "They're still coming," the tactical officer whispered. "No course change. No speed reduction. They're just coming straight at us." On the Indomitable Will's bridge, Rita read off the enemy formation. "They've got a decent spread, Admiral. Covering all approach vectors. Some of those cruisers are packing serious firepower." "How serious?" James asked. "Plasma torpedoes, mass drivers, particle beams. Any one of those ships could take out a city." "Ah. And how many cities can we take out?" Rita glanced at her display, then back at James. "All of them, sir. Every city on every planet in this system. Simultaneously. And we'd still have 90% of our ammunition left." James nodded slowly. "But we're not here to destroy cities, are we?" "No, sir. We're here to make a point." "Yes, sir." "Then let's make it clearly. Continue forward. When they fire, and they will fire, I want shields at maximum. Let them see exactly how useless their weapons are." Back in the council chamber, Telrix stared at the display as the human ship continued its steady, inevitable approach. His crystalline form had stopped pulsing. He'd moved beyond stress into something closer to terror. "They're not stopping," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "Why aren't they stopping?" Counselor Drex tried to sound confident. "Because they're fools. They'll learn soon enough. Our fleet will tear that oversized cargo hauler apart." But even as he said it, watching that massive dark shape continue forward without hesitation, something in his voice suggested he didn't quite believe his own words anymore. The human ship came on like a force of nature. Unstoppable. Unavoidable. Inevitable. And the Council was about to learn what humanity meant by the word, overwhelming. Fleet Commander Dravik had served in the Council's defense forces for 30 years. He'd fought pirates in the Outer Rim, stopped 3 attempted coups, and once held off a rebel fleet with half the ships he had now. He knew combat. He knew tactics. He knew when to press an advantage and when to retreat. But he'd never seen anything like this. "All ships," he transmitted, trying to keep his voice steady. "Fire at will. Concentrate all firepower on the target." 300 warships opened fire at once. The space between the fleet and the human vessel turned into pure light. Plasma torpedoes streaked across the void, each one carrying enough destructive power to vaporize a mountain range. Mass driver rounds, chunks of dense metal accelerated to incredible speeds, capable of punching through continental plates. Energy beams that could boil entire oceans cut through the darkness. It was the kind of firepower that ended wars. The kind that made entire civilizations surrender rather than face it. Every single shot hit the human ship. In the council chamber, delegates pressed closer to the display screens. Some covered their eyes. Others held their breath. The entire station shook slightly from the energy discharge happening just a few hundred kilometers away. "Did we get it?" someone whispered. The light from the weapon's fire was so intense that the sensors temporarily whited out. For 10 long seconds, nobody could see anything except the brilliant glow of destructive energy. Then it faded. The human ship sat in space exactly where it had been before. Not moving. Not damaged. Not even marked. The hull that had just absorbed enough firepower to destroy a planet didn't have a single scratch. No scorch marks. No dents. No signs that anything had happened at all. "That's impossible," Counselor Drex breathed. "Nothing survives that. Nothing." High Chancellor Moroz's mandibles clicked together rapidly, a sign of severe distress in his species. "Scan it again. The sensors must be wrong." "Sensors are functioning perfectly, Chancellor," the tactical officer reported, his voice hollow. "The human ship is completely undamaged." The communications system crackled again. That same calm human voice came through, and if anything, it sounded slightly amused. "That tickled. Our turn." On the bridge of the Indomitable Will, Admiral James Carter stood up from his command chair. He walked slowly to the forward viewport, hands clasped behind his back, and stared out at the Council fleet. "Commander Hayes," he said quietly. "Sir?" Rita looked up from her tactical display. "Target the dead moon in orbit 7. The one with no atmosphere, no resources, nothing living on it." "Yes, sir." "Main gun. Main gun. 0.3% power. Rita's fingers paused over her console. Sir, even at 0.3%, that's still? I know exactly what it is, Commander. James turned to face her. His expression was calm, but his eyes were hard. These people fired on our scout ship. They need to understand what they're dealing with. But we're not murderers. We won't fire on their fleet. We'll fire on a rock. Now execute the order. Yes, sir. Spooling up the main gun. The Indomitable Will's primary weapon ran the entire length of the ship. A magnetic accelerator cannon 3 kilometers long, capable of launching projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. The technology was elegant in its simplicity. Take a dense metal rod. Accelerate it really, really fast. Let physics do the rest. Deep in the ship's belly, the weapon systems came online. Massive capacitors that had been charging since they entered the system released their stored energy. Magnetic coils the size of buildings created a field so powerful that it could tear apart normal matter. A single tungsten rod, 30 meters long and 2 meters wide, loaded into the firing chamber. Main gun ready, Rita reported. Target locked. Firing solution confirmed. Fire, James said simply. The Indomitable Will shuddered slightly. Just once. Like a giant taking a single breath. The tungsten rod launched. It crossed the distance to the dead moon in less than 2 seconds. When it hit, the impact released more energy than 1,000 nuclear weapons detonating simultaneously. The moon didn't explode. Explosions implied some structural integrity remained. This was different. The entire celestial body simply came apart at the atomic level. One moment there was a moon. The next, there was a rapidly expanding cloud of vaporized rock and molten debris. But the weapon's power didn't stop there. The sheer energy output created gravitational distortions in the local space. The debris cloud, instead of flying off in all directions, started to collapse inward. Chunks of molten rock spiraled toward the impact point, forming a temporary accretion disk that glowed white-hot. It looked like the birth of a solar system compressed into 30 seconds. Then, as the energy dissipated, the disk broke apart, sending planet-killer asteroids spinning off in every direction. The entire process took less than a minute. In the council chamber, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Several delegates had fallen to the floor. Others stood frozen, staring at the display where a moon had been moments ago. Ambassador Telrix's crystalline body had gone completely transparent. His species did that when experiencing shock so profound that their bodies couldn't process it. That was 0.3%? Someone whispered. 0.3. The tactical officer's hands shook as he ran the calculations. If that had been aimed at our station, we wouldn't have had time to evacuate. We wouldn't have had time to even register what was happening. We'd just be gone. How many of those can they fire? Moros asked, his voice barely audible. The tactical officer checked his scans of the human ship. When he saw the results, what little color his species had drained from his face. Based on the energy reserves we're detecting, and assuming every shot uses that much power, they could fire continuously for 3 days. James Carter's voice came over the communications system one more time. That was a demonstration. We could have aimed at your fleet. We could have aimed at your station. We chose not to. We chose to destroy an empty rock instead. Because unlike you, we don't fire on others without cause. Remember that. The council chamber remained silent. They would remember. None of them would ever forget. The glowing debris field from what had been a moon still lit up the tactical displays. Nobody in the council chamber had moved since the demonstration. They barely breathed. I would like permission to address the council, Admiral James Carter transmitted. His voice was calm, almost conversational, as if he hadn't just destroyed a celestial body. High Chancellor Moros stared at the display. His compound eyes couldn't look away from the molten rock still spinning in space. He opened his mouth twice before words came out. Permission granted. The hologram projector in the center of the council chamber flickered to life. James Carter appeared, life-sized, standing as if he were actually in the room. He wore a dark blue military uniform with minimal decorations. No flashy medals. No gold trim. Just a simple uniform that had clearly seen years of use. His gray hair was cut short and practical. His face had the kind of lines that came from too many difficult decisions over too many years. Behind him in the hologram, the bridge of the Indomitable Will was visible. Crew members worked at their stations in near silence. Professional. Efficient. No drama. You made a mistake, James began. His voice wasn't angry. Wasn't threatening. Just stating a fact. You made several mistakes, actually. But the biggest one was assuming we were weak because we were new to you. He took a step forward in the hologram. Even though it was just light and projections, several council members leaned back in their seats. You saw our scout ship. Old design. No visible weapons. Slow by your standards. And you thought that's all we had. You thought we were primitives stumbling into space, hoping someone would be nice to us. James shook his head slowly. You assumed we were naive because we approached peacefully. He gestured with one hand and the chamber filled with images. Holographic scenes surrounded every council member, impossible to look away from. A city in flames. Buildings collapsing. The distinctive mushroom cloud of a nuclear weapon rising into the sky. Another scene. Trenches full of soldiers. Gas attacks. Chemical weapons turning battlefields into poison zones. More images. Bombers over cities. Tank battles across scorched earth. Entire civilizations brought to their knees by warfare. This is Earth, James said quietly. This is humanity. We've been fighting wars for 10,000 years. Wars over land. Wars over resources. Wars over ideas. We got good at it because we had to. Because the alternative was extinction. Ambassador Telrix's crystalline body had stopped glowing entirely. You did all this to yourselves? Your own species. Over and over again, James confirmed. We nearly wiped ourselves out 3 separate times. Nuclear war. Biological weapons. Climate collapse from industrial warfare. Each time we pulled back from the edge. Barely. We learned something from each near-extinction event. The holographic images shifted. Now they showed massive construction projects. Orbital shipyards. Enormous vessels taking shape in the darkness of space. We learned that hoping for peace isn't enough, James continued. Hope is beautiful. Hope is necessary. But hope alone gets you killed. You have to be ready for war if you want to keep your peace. Commander Rita Hayes stepped into the hologram beside James. She was younger but carried herself with the same quiet confidence. The scout ship your patrol fired on? That wasn't an accident. It wasn't ignorance on our part. Several council members sat up straighter. We sent that ship deliberately, Rita explained. Old model. No weapons. Minimal shielding. We sent it into space near your borders to see what would happen. To test whether you were really the peaceful federation your public broadcasts claim to be. Or whether you were just another empire that respects only force, James added. Just another government that sees weakness and attacks. Telrix's form pulsed once, weakly. A test? You tested us. Every species we've encountered so far has been tested, Rita said. Some passed. They approached our unarmed vessel peacefully. Asked questions. Offered help. Those species, we've begun establishing trade and diplomatic relations with. And those who failed? Counselor Drex asked, though his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. You're the first to actually fire on us, James said. Congratulations. The silence in the chamber was absolute. How many ships like the Indomitable do you have? Telrix finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. James glanced at Rita. She pulled up a data file and read from it. Titan-class warships currently in active service? 37. Another 12 in construction. 15 more planned. Gasps echoed through the chamber. 37 ships. Each one capable of destroying moons. Of wiping out entire defense fleets without taking a scratch. But that's not the right question, James said, his tone still conversational. The question you should be asking is how many ship classes we have that are more powerful than the Titan. Nobody wanted to ask. But everyone needed to know. The silence stretched out. 5 seconds. 10. 20. 12, James finally said. We have 12 ship classes rated above the Titan. High Chancellor Moros made a sound like air escaping. His mandibles clicked together rapidly, something his species did under extreme stress. 12 classes. Above this. The Indomitable Will is a mid-range warship, Rita confirmed. She pulled up another hologram showing the silhouettes of different ship designs. Each one larger than the last. We have the Titan class which you've met. Above that is the Colossus class. Then the Leviathan class. Then the Behemoth class. I can keep going if you'd like. That won't be necessary, Moros whispered. James clasped his hands behind his back. We didn't build these ships because we're warlike. We built them because we know what happens when you're unprepared. We've lived through it. We've nearly died from it. And we decided, as a species, that we would never be victims again. He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many council members as possible. We came to your galaxy hoping to find friends, James said. We're still hoping for that. But we came prepared in case we found something else instead. Based on what happened 48 hours ago, it seems our preparations were justified. The hologram flickered slightly, but James's presence remained commanding. So now we need to talk about what happens next, James said. Because right now you have a decision to make. And I strongly suggest you make the right one. Admiral James Carter let the silence in the council chamber stretch out for another few seconds. He wanted them to really think about what came next. Behind him in the hologram, the bridge crew of the Indomitable will continue their work, calm and professional despite sitting in a warship that had just terrified an entire galactic government. Here are our terms, James said finally. His voice carried the kind of finality that made it clear these weren't negotiating positions. First, Captain Vorith, the Zafrani officer who fired on our scout ship, will stand trial under human military law for unprovoked attack on a peaceful vessel. Ambassador Telrix's crystalline body flickered. You want one of our captains? That's non-negotiable, James interrupted. He attacked us without warning. Without cause. In human space that's attempted murder. He'll get a fair trial. He'll have legal representation. But he will answer for what he did. Second, Commander Rita Hayes stepped forward in the hologram. The Zafrani Empire will issue a formal public apology for the attack. Not a private statement. Not a diplomatic note. A public broadcast admitting fault. Telrix looked like he wanted to argue, but one glance at the tactical display, where the Titan's weapon system still glowed ready, and he stayed quiet. Third, James continued, humanity will be granted immediate full membership in the Galactic Council. Not probationary status. Not observer status. Full voting membership with all the privileges and rights that come with it. High Chancellor Moroz's antennae twitched. That's unprecedented. New species undergo a probationary period of at least 50 years. It's standard procedure. It ensures you can keep them weak and dependent while you figure out how to exploit them, Rita cut in. We've read your council charter. We know how this works. Species apply for membership. You give them probationary status. They get to attend meetings but can't vote. Can't propose legislation. Can't defend their own interests. Meanwhile, established members get 50 years to carve up their territory and resources. She crossed her arms. We're not interested in being exploited. We're offering partnership as equals, or we're not offering anything at all. And if we refuse your terms? Moroz asked. His voice was quiet, and despite the question, his tone made it clear he already knew the answer. James didn't threaten. Didn't raise his voice. He simply glanced at the tactical display visible behind him. The Titan's weapons systems glowed green, showing full charge and ready status. In the background, the debris field from the destroyed moon still glittered, still glowed with residual heat. Let's not find out, James said quietly. I really hope we don't have to find out. Moroz looked around the council chamber. Every delegate stared back at him. Some looked terrified. Others looked resigned. A few looked almost relieved, as if they'd been waiting for something to shake up the council's established order. I call for an immediate vote, Moroz announced. All those in favor of accepting humanity's terms? Hands, claws, tentacles, and appendages of every description rose into the air. Every single member voted yes. The vote is unanimous, Moroz declared. His voice sounded tired. Ancient. Welcome to the Galactic Council, humanity. I hope we can move forward from this incident constructively. So do we, James replied. We'll send our first ambassador within the week. Captain Vorith has 24 hours to surrender himself to our custody, or we'll come get him. I trust that won't be necessary. It won't be, Telrix said softly, his glow dimming with what might have been shame. As the official proceedings wrapped up, something unexpected happened. An elderly council member that most delegates barely noticed approached the hologram. Elder Curies was ancient even by galactic standards. Her species had evolved beyond physical form millions of years ago. Now she existed as pure energy, barely visible except as a faint shimmer in the air. She spoke directly to James, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. May I have a word, Admiral? Of course, Elder. The other council members filed out, leaving just the hologram of James and the shimmering presence of Curies in the empty chamber. We have a saying among the old species, Curies whispered. The most dangerous beings in the universe are not the ones who shout and threaten. They're the ones who have survived everything, who have nothing left to prove, who speak softly and carry the means to end worlds. James met her gaze or where her gaze would have been. We don't want to be dangerous, Elder. We never wanted that. I know, Curies replied. That's what makes you truly terrifying. You didn't come here seeking conquest. You came seeking friends. But you came prepared for enemies. That kind of wisdom usually takes species millions of years to learn. You learned it in thousands. We had good teachers, James said with a slight smile. War. Suffering. Near extinction. They're harsh teachers but effective ones. You won't be victims again, Curie said with certainty. Not after today. The galaxy will remember this. Some will fear you. Some will respect you. But none will ever underestimate you again. The hologram flickered and faded as James ended the transmission. On the bridge of the indomitable will, James stood and stretched. Commander Hayes set course for home. Let's go back to Earth. Yes, sir. Engaging engines. The massive warship turned gracefully in space. Its engines ignited in a brilliant cascade of blue light, bright enough to be seen from the Council station. The Titan accelerated smoothly, picking up speed, and then in a flash of light that bent space itself, it vanished into faster-than-light travel. Later, in the Admiral's ready room, James poured 2 glasses of whiskey from his personal reserve. He handed one to Rita. Think they learned their lesson? Rita asked, settling into a chair. James took a sip and smiled slightly. They learned that humanity doesn't start fights. But we sure as hell know how to finish them. They learned that being new doesn't mean being weak. And they learned that if you fire on us, there will be consequences. The other species out there will hear about this, Rita observed. Word will spread. Good, James replied. Let it spread. Let every species in this galaxy know that humans are here, and we're not to be trifled with. Maybe next time they'll try talking first. The Indomitable will jump through hyperspace carrying its crew home. Behind it, the Galactic Council would never be the same. The age of humanity had begun, and the galaxy would have to adjust to this new reality. Peace through strength. Friendship through respect. And never, ever mistake kindness for weakness. That was the human way, and the galaxy had just learned it the hard way.